what is your feeling on what has happened in the booking of this fight card at 304 happening in the very, very early hours? We're not going to see the main event till probably 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, 5:15. I was there at UFC 204 at the Manchester Arena when Michael Bisping fought Dan Henderson, and it was a similar situation. The start time was postponed to correlate with the amount of North American fans who'd be buying the pay-per-view. And yeah, it was about 5:15 or 5:30 when Bisping got introduced by Bruce Buffer. So I still have PTSD from this. I remember I drank copious amounts of Monster, and then when I was on the train home, the first train home, from Manchester back to London, I was jittering on the chair because I'd had so much caffeine. Uh, I mean, I understand why the UFC have decided to delay the start time, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in great detail. But I think it's a major kick in the stomach for fans over here who also expected the start time to be at the same time as UFC 286, which we just had last March, which was catered for our UK fans. And
Mm.
so that was a big welterweight title trilogy fight between Kamaru Usman and Leon Edwards. Kamaru Usman, I know a lot of people don't necessarily like him, but Kamaru Usman does draw eyes pay-per-view wise. So if anything, I would have thought that they would have put that card at the main card at 3 a.m. But
Yeah.
lo and behold, now that that's come to bite us back now for 3 or 4. I think fans, and I saw the outrage on Twitter. I'm gonna confess, I didn't read fully the press release to begin with, so I just thought, okay, UFC 304, we're back. I assumed it was the normal time is at 286. And then in my mentions, and then I saw viral tweets, people complaining about the start time. Then I had to actually look. I was like, oh my god, yeah, it's a 3 a.m. main card start time. I think it's a kick in the stomach to these fans who stay up week in, week out to to watch Brits abroad. You would think that, and we're expecting to have both Leon Edwards and Tom Aspinall on the card. Nothing's been confirmed at this moment in time, but I know it's trending towards that. You think that you'd give these champions the best homecoming possible. I know obviously you shouldn't necessarily cater and play favorites or what have you, but ultimately that's the reason why you're doing this. That's the reason why you go into this new 365 million pound arena to give them a grand homecoming. But
Yeah.
to do it at a time when when people will be fading, and believe me, people will be fading. I remember it was I think it was actually speaking of Leon, actually, yeah, it was around Leon Edwards who he fought a Russian guy, very good Russian guy called Albert Tumenov on the prelims of UFC 204.
Mhm.
And I think that was the final prelim. I can't remember if the cards all blur into one. And people were fast asleep in the crowd.
Yeah.
People were fast asleep, and people were fast asleep before Song Two came on from Michael Bisping, and he made his walk to. I just think it's a lot to ask on us, and like, yeah, obviously UK fans are obviously just geographically shafted by the time difference and the fact that UFC is a Las Vegas, North American based company in general. Um, but you would just want the UFC just to. And I said it beforehand. The majority of their pay-per-views come from North America. They're obviously catering towards them, um, towards the North American fans, so they can get the most bang for their buck. Um, but you just think that just for this instance, and especially because they get a set fee each year from ESPN, which
Yeah.
essentially covers the pay-per-view buys, you think
Mhm.
that they'd they'd say, okay, let's call like a mulligan on this one and do it at prime time for UK fans and what have you. And but evidently no. And also, well, I don't know if the UFC have get a percentage of drink sales. I know some promotions get a percentage of drink sales in the arena. I'm pretty sure come around 3 o'clock, fans are not going to be able to drink anymore. So they'll be missing out on money in that sense.
Mm.
But ultimately, I think the UFC, they know they've got the market cornered over here because as much as I like the emergence of PFL and I was a fan of Bellator, those shows don't really sell out over here. The UFC, the name brand, that's what sells. That's what sells to the casual mixed martial arts fan. Like the UFC, I believe, is probably the only brand in the world, maybe along with like the WWE, that can just announce a show
Mhm.
that it's okay. Say, well, argument say we're coming to Manchester, obviously, or say we're going to Liverpool or what have you. They can wait to announce the main event until like maybe even after tickets go on sale, and the events are gonna sell out. So I think obviously they're capitalizing on the fact that they've cornered the market, and they know that the UK fan base is so loyal that they are gonna part with their hard-earned cash. And I hope the ticket prices aren't the same price that they were for 286, which was absolutely extortionate. Um, and I hope that they learned a lesson from the subsequent card in July, because there were some empty seats in the O2 Arena
Yeah.
because they tried to maintain the same ticket prices. I hope that they lower the prices because of that. I mean, that would be the sensible thing to do, to be like, okay, we're giving it to you at a less than unsociable time, a less than sociable time, sorry. So like, here's a trade-off. The tickets are going to be like maybe 50, 60 quid cheaper.
Mhm.
But UFC are a money-making machine, so I don't foresee that happening.
Yeah,
But
I think I've got a few issues with this. I think one of them is, and I'm not a financial advisor, so I'm sure there's plenty of reasons why this is happening, but is Tom Aspinall versus Curtis Blades and Leon Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad a massive pay-per-view driver in the United States?
yeah,
And if it's not, is it worth the damage that you are doing to your reputation amongst UK fans, which is you don't particularly value us in the same way because you're happy to drag us through the night to watch this.
yeah,
I'm sure they've got graphs that show it's worth it. I'm sure they have. Like I'm sure they have thought this stuff through. But as you said, like Leon versus Kamaru, yeah, all right. Kamaru Usman's got a lot of cash in America. Right? He's got a lot. Bilal and Curtis Blades, I don't know. I just don't know. That's clearly the decision they've made is that it is worth it. The other issue I've got with it, and this is a bit more pertinent, I think, is that whenever I go to a UFC event, I'm always so pleased to be able to tell people that the crowd isn't what you think.
yeah,
It's mixed. It's a really diverse crowd. Okay, you do get the big groups of lads, and they're loud and they're raucous and they're having a great time. And there's no reason why they shouldn't be there. That's brilliant. They bring the atmosphere. But you also get a lot of kids. You get a lot of families coming. You get a lot of young lads coming with their dads. You get a lot of young girls coming with their dads because this is their opportunity to watch the sport they love. You might have kids who are doing, judo classes or karate classes, and it's like, wow, this is a big day out for us. And literally every time I've been there, I'm so keen to look around to see who's in there. I'm so keen to look around, and there is a mix. There is diversity in that crowd in terms of age and gender, and it's brilliant to see. You are not going to get any of that. You're a father, okay? 20 months is going to be too young to take to a UFC event anyway. But if your young girl it becomes a UFC fan and you're going there as a fan, she's 6 years old. Are you really going to want to take her to an all-night show like this?
no, you're completely right. Yeah, I like the fact that you mentioned the diversity of the UFC crowd, because for a long time the perception of the average mixed martial arts fan was not
Yeah,
was not great.
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, to answer your question, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. Even it would pain me to tell her like, look, we're not doing this, because it's one thing messing up my own sleep pattern, but to then do that subsequently to a child as well, it's yeah,
I just think it's a shame that, if the likes of, say, Paddy Pimblett's fighting on this card, we're not going to have a bunch of 10-year-olds in the audience with Paddy Pimblett wigs on going crazy
yeah,
when he comes out, because that is a part of this sport now. And I think it's a really enjoyable part of it. And it's a thing, like I said, that it's nice to tell people who don't love the sport, come along. It's not what you
yeah.
think. And, trouble and drinking aside, just the time is going to mean that these kids aren't going to be there seeing their heroes getting inspired. I think we're not a fan of it. I think that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just thankful that I'm not a fighter or a coach, like
Yeah.
who has to be like dialed in, 100% dialed in. And I mean, look, it's human nature. Like at nighttime, no matter how long you try to adapt your body for, you cannot function optimally. And like
Mm,
it will have an effect on the fights to a certain extent, but I know these are professionals and what have you, and they'll probably take melatonin to try sleep at night during the day and what have you. But you just don't perform optimally. No one's going
mm.
to perform optimally for media members to fight to fight.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, as I said there, lots of caffeine. Hopefully, on the first train home, I'm not jittering like I was 8 years ago. But that's what we're gonna have to do, Nick. Lots of caffeine.